The drive from Scarborough to Union Station takes 40 minutes when the traffic cooperates, and that Tuesday morning in November, it did not cooperate. I sat behind the wheel watching the highway crawl and thought about my daughter's voice on the phone the night before. She hadn't cried. That was what scared me. My daughter cries when she's sad, always has, since she was 3 years old and her goldfish died and she made us hold a funeral in the backyard. But last night her voice was flat and dry, like paper left in the sun too long. She let me go, Mum. She said I wasn't right for the position anymore. She said it in front of everyone. I asked her where she was. I'm at the station. I have my bag. I have Liam. I told her to stay where she was. I was coming. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say anything. She just breathed for a moment. And then the line went quiet. And I knew that was the worst of it. Not the job, not the humiliation, but that my daughter had run out of words entirely. I found her sitting on a bench near the south entrance, Liam asleep in his stroller with his chin tucked down to his chest, a half-eaten granola bar on the seat beside him. My daughter had her coat zipped up to her neck even though it was warm inside the station. She looked like someone who had been told, very calmly and clearly, that they did not belong anywhere. I had seen that look before, not on her, on myself. A long time ago, I didn't say anything dramatic. I squeezed her shoulder, folded down the stroller handles, and said, "Come on, let's go get some breakfast." She looked up at me. "It's 11:30. Brunch then." We went to the diner on Front Street where we used to go when she was in university and needed to talk things through over eggs and bad coffee. The same woman was still working there, the one with the silver braid and the laugh that fills the whole room. She brought Liam a little cup of apple juice without being asked, and I watched my daughter's face do something complicated, trying to hold itself together. "Tell me everything," I said, and she did. My daughter had been working for her mother-in-law's company for 4 years. It started the way those things always start, genuinely, with good intentions on both sides. My son-in-law's family ran a mid-sized commercial property firm out of Mississauga, the kind of company that had been built over 30 years into something respectable and locally known. When my daughter married into the family, her mother-in-law had offered her a role in client relations. She was good at it. She was very good at it, actually. Within 2 years, she had brought in 3 of their largest accounts and restructured the way they handled lease renewals, which the accountant told her privately had saved the company close to $200,000 over 18 months. She was not thanked for this. She was told that her suggestions were helpful and that she showed good instincts for someone who didn't come from a business background. My daughter had a business degree from Queen's. She let it go. She let a lot of things go. Those first 2 years, because she was new and she was trying and because her husband kept saying his mother just needed time to warm up. Then Liam was born and something shifted. Her mother-in-law began scheduling early morning meetings on my daughter's office days, knowing the daycare didn't open until 8:30. She started copying my son-in-law on internal emails in ways that suggested my daughter had made errors she hadn't made. Small things, subtle things. The kind of things that are very hard to point at directly without sounding paranoid. My daughter told me some of this as it was happening, and I listened, and I said the things mothers say: give it time, be patient, keep documentation, you are not imagining it. But I was doing something else at the same time. I was paying attention. I had been paying attention for years to something much larger than the office politics, and by the time my daughter called me from Union Station, I was ready. I had been ready for a while. Let me back up, because this part matters. When my husband was alive, we owned 3 properties in the Niagara region, a house in St. Mane, Catherine's, where we raised our children, a small commercial unit on Ontario Street that we leased to a print shop, and a parcel of undeveloped land just east of the tourist belt near Niagara-on-the-Lake, about 4 acres. Good road access, not far from the wine route. My husband bought that land in 1991 because he believed in it. He said, one day that whole corridor is going to be worth something. He was right. He was often right about land. When he passed in 2014, everything came to me. I was 61 years old, recently retired from teaching, and I had absolutely no interest in selling any of it. I kept the house, I kept the commercial unit, and I kept the land. My daughter's mother-in-law, I will call her what my daughter calls her, so her mother-in-law had been building her portfolio steadily through the 2010s. I knew this because my daughter talked about the business, and also because I made it my habit to understand things. She had acquired several properties along the Niagara corridor, mostly commercial, some mixed use. She had a gift for identifying land before the market caught up to it. I respected that about her, even when I didn't respect much else. In the summer of 2021, I received a call from a real estate lawyer in St. Catharines. He represented a numbered company that was interested in purchasing my 4-acre parcel near Niagara-on-the-Lake. The offer was reasonable, not exceptional, but reasonable. Not exceptional, but reasonable. I said I would think about it. I thought about it for a while. I had my own lawyer look into the numbered company. It took him 2 weeks and 1 call to the corporate registry office. The numbered company was a subsidiary of my daughter's mother-in-law's firm. She was trying to buy my land. She had sent a lawyer to do it without telling me who she was. I did not call her. I did not tell my daughter. I thanked my lawyer, told him to decline the offer politely, and began keeping a different kind of file. Over the next year and a half, I watched. I read. I made phone calls to people who knew people. The parcel of land she wanted was positioned directly adjacent to a site she had already acquired, a former orchard property she had permitted for a boutique hotel and event venue development, something that had been written up in the Niagara business press as one of the most anticipated hospitality projects in the region. The drawings were beautiful. I had seen them because my daughter had shown them to me proudly, not knowing what I knew. Here is what the drawings did not show. The approved access road to the development ran partially across my 4 acres. The traffic study had been filed with the municipality on the assumption that the adjacent parcel would be either acquired or granted an easement. Without it, the site access did not meet regional requirements. Without it, they could not receive their occupancy permit. She needed my land to open her flagship development, and she did not own it. And she had not told me, or my daughter, or anyone in our family, that this was the case. I sat with this for a long time. I want to be clear about that. I am not a person who acts from anger. I taught grade 7 English for 29 years, and I will tell you that every lesson I tried to give those children came down to one thing. Evidence matters more than emotion, and patience matters more than speed. I had evidence. I had time. I decided to wait for the right moment, and to make sure that when the moment came, I had everything organized so clearly that there could be no confusion about what had happened and why. I also started looking for a very good real estate lawyer. My daughter stayed with me for 3 weeks after the station. She slept in her old room. Liam slept in the crib we still kept in the spare room because I had never gotten around to dismantling it, and was glad now that I hadn't. In the mornings, she would sit at the kitchen table in her housecoat and drink tea and stare out at the backyard. And I would sit across from her and not press her to talk. And sometimes she would, and sometimes she wouldn't. She talked about her marriage, and I listened carefully. My son-in-law had not been cruel. He had been absent. That was the more honest way to put it. For the 2 years that his mother had been quietly reshaping the ground under my daughter's feet at work, he had been looking the other way. Not lying, exactly. Just never quite present enough to see what was happening, or choosing not to see, which amounts to the same thing. I don't know if he knew, she said one morning. I don't know either, I said, but he should have, she nodded. She wrapped both hands around her mug. What do I do, Mum? First, I said, you find out what you want, not what you think you should want, what you actually want. She was quiet for a moment. I want to not feel like this anymore. That's a start, I said. I told her to get herself a good family lawyer. I told her to keep every piece of documentation from her time at the company, every email, every performance review, every message on her phone. I told her that the way her mother-in-law had treated her was not normal, and it was not acceptable, and that whether or not she chose to pursue anything formally, she should have everything organized in case she ever did. My daughter looked at me. You sound like you've been thinking about this for a while. I have, I said. How long? I got up to refill the kettle. A while. The development project was scheduled to host its investor preview dinner in early spring. It was a significant event, the kind of evening that signals to the business community that a project has arrived, that the money is real, that the dream is becoming a building. My daughter's mother-in-law had booked a venue in Niagara-on-the-Lake, a beautiful room, 40 guests, the regional press invited. She had been planning it for 2 years. My lawyer had been quietly busy for 6 months. 3 weeks before the dinner, the Municipal Planning Office received a formal notice of objection to the provisional easement application that had been filed, without my knowledge or consent, over my 4-acre property. The application had been submitted by the numbered company 18 months earlier, during the period when I had declined to sell. Somewhere in the administration, the objection had been delayed. My lawyer found it, corrected the record, and filed a notice of registered ownership with supporting documentation that made the situation unambiguous. I owned the land. No easement had been granted. The access configuration did not meet regional road standards. The occupancy permit could not be issued as planned. My lawyer sent the notice directly to the project's lead solicitor, copied to the regional municipality, copied to the lender that had financed the development. He sent it at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday. He told me later that he received a call back within 20 minutes. I was at home when all of this was happening. I was making soup. I had a pot of chicken vegetable going on the back burner, and Liam was at my feet putting measuring spoons in and out of a mixing bowl. And the light was coming through the window over the sink the way it does in early spring when the snow has just gone. But everything is still pale and bare and waiting. I thought about my husband and what he would have thought of all this. I think he would have smiled quietly and gone back to whatever he was reading. He was a man who took satisfaction in things working out the way they should. My phone rang twice that morning from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them go to voicemail. Both messages were from the same lawyer, asking to speak urgently about the Niagara-on-the-Lake parcel. I gave them my lawyer's number. I did not go to the investor dinner. That was never the goal. I want to be precise about what I wanted, because I think it matters. I did not want to humiliate anyone in a room full of people. I did not want a confrontation or a scene or the kind of dramatic moment that makes for a good story later but leaves everyone feeling scraped hollow. What I wanted was for the record to be correct. I wanted the legal reality to be accurate. I wanted my daughter to know that the woman who had fired her, who had spent 4 years managing her out of a company she had genuinely helped to build, did not have the power she thought she had. Not entirely. Not where it counted. The development stalled. Not permanently. These things rarely collapse entirely when the money is serious. But for long enough that it cost. Financing timelines shifted. The investor preview was postponed and then scaled back. Negotiations with the regional municipality had to be restarted. My lawyer eventually reached a settlement with the numbered company that included a genuine fair market value easement agreement and a formal acknowledgement of prior filing irregularities. I received more in that settlement than the original purchase offer by a meaningful margin. My daughter's mother-in-law called me personally. Once during this process, she was composed on the phone. I'll give her that. She told me she hoped we could find a resolution that worked for everyone, that this had been an administrative matter, that she hadn't meant for things to become complicated. I let her finish. Then I said, I hope my daughter is well. Please pass that along. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said yes, of course she would. I thanked her for calling and ended the conversation. My daughter and her husband separated in April. It was not sudden, even if it felt that way to some people watching from the outside. She told me about it the afternoon it was decided, sitting at my kitchen table, same as always, and she seemed lighter than she had in months. Not happy exactly. Lighter, like something had been put down. He kept saying he didn't know, she said, and maybe he didn't, but I kept thinking, that's not enough. You have to pay attention. You have to be present enough to notice. Yes, I said. He wasn't. No, I agreed. He wasn't. Liam was in the backyard with his toy trucks, moving dirt from one corner of the garden to another with great seriousness and purpose. We watched him through the window for a minute without saying anything. I'm going to be okay, my daughter said. It wasn't a question. You are, I said. You're already better than okay. You're learning what you're made of. She laughed a little. I know what I'm made of. I came from you." I reached over and squeezed her hand. I am not telling this story to make myself the hero of it, and I want to be careful about that. I made choices along the way that I thought about seriously. I could have told my daughter what I knew earlier. I chose not to, and I've sat with whether that was right. I chose to wait until she made her own decisions so that none of it could be said to be my interference in her marriage or her choices. I wanted her to come to her own conclusions with her own eyes. Whether I was right to do that, I genuinely don't know. What I do know is this: the woman who fired my daughter, who told her she didn't belong in their world, had been building her most significant project on land that my husband bought in 1991 because he believed in it. She had tried to acquire that land through a numbered company specifically to avoid having to look me in the eye while she did it. She had taken 4 years of my daughter's work and talent and poured it into a company that was then structured to push her out when she was no longer convenient. And she had done all of this while sitting across from me at Christmas dinners and saying that family was everything. I'm 63 years old. I taught children for nearly 3 decades. I have seen a lot of different kinds of power: loud power, quiet power, the kind that announces itself and the kind that never says a word. The kind that lasts is always the quiet kind, the kind built on patience, on paying attention, on keeping your files organized and your intentions clear, and your word meaning something when you give it. My daughter asked me once, during those weeks she stayed with me, if I had been angry. I thought about it honestly. "Not angry," I said. "Clear." She thought about that. "What's the difference?" "Anger wants to be seen," I said. "Clear just wants to be right." Outside, Liam was calling for us. He had found a worm in the garden and wanted to show somebody. My daughter got up from the table and went to the back door and opened it, and I heard her voice change the way it always does when she talks to him. Softer, like a room with the windows open in June. Some things you cannot take from a person, no matter how much leverage you think you have, no matter how many meetings you schedule or performance reviews you shape, or administrative filings you quietly push through without asking. You cannot take from a person what they have built in themselves. You cannot own the ground under someone who knows exactly who they are. My husband knew that. He bought 4 acres in 1991 on instinct and patience, and the quiet certainty that the right thing, tended carefully, becomes something that lasts. He was right. He usually was. I've thought about what my husband would say if he could see how things turned out. He wasn't a man who talked much about fairness or justice. Those words felt too large and too abstract for him. He talked about land. He talked about what lasts. He'd say, "You don't plant a tree for yourself. You plant it for the people coming after you." He bought 4 acres near Niagara-on-the-Lake in 1991 because he believed in it, and he was right. And the reason he was right had nothing to do with luck. It had to do with the kind of person he was: patient, honest, paying attention to things other people dismissed. What happened to my daughter was not an accident, and it was not random. When her mother-in-law spent 4 years slowly reshaping the ground under her feet, copying her husband on emails to imply errors that didn't exist, scheduling meetings she knew conflicted with daycare, taking credit quietly for work that wasn't hers, she was counting on my daughter not being able to see it clearly until it was too late. She was counting on confusion, on self-doubt, on the accumulated weight of small indignities making a person question their own judgment. That is a particular kind of cruelty. It doesn't look like cruelty from the outside, which is exactly why it works as long as it does. But here is what I've learned. Over 63 years and 29 years in a classroom and all the ordinary, difficult things in between, the people who operate that way are not, in the end, as powerful as they believe themselves to be. They depend on other people not paying attention. They depend on documents not being organized, on records not being kept, on the people they're managing never quite understanding the full picture. The moment someone does understand, the moment someone has been paying careful attention and has kept their files in order and knows exactly where the property lines are, the whole structure becomes much more fragile than it looked. My daughter is going to be fine. She already is, mostly. She's found a position at a firm in Hamilton that values what she brings, and she goes to work now in the mornings without that particular tension in her shoulders that I watched develop over 4 years without being able to name it. Liam is in a good daycare. She and her husband are working through the separation with as much decency as two people can manage when things have come apart. What I want her to carry forward from all of this is not bitterness. That would be a waste. What I want her to carry is the understanding that doing right by people, building her work honestly, and refusing to shrink herself to fit a space that was designed to be too small for her. Those things have a cumulative weight. They accumulate on the right side of the scale. It may not feel like that in the moment when someone is firing you in front of your colleagues and telling you that you don't belong, but time clarifies things. Evidence matters. Patience is not passivity. It is a form of precision. You wait until you can see the whole picture, and then you act from that clarity, not from the hurt. My husband knew that. He bought land on instinct and held it on principle and never once needed anyone to know the full story of why. That kind of integrity doesn't announce itself. It just quietly becomes the ground everything else is built on. I think about that sometimes when I'm making soup and Liam is at my feet and the light is coming through the window and I think, this is enough. This right here is exactly enough.